Hello fragrance fans, it's Captain Sensible here. Quick review for you before Mr. Smelly does his video. So we're looking at Chanel Allure Sport today by Versace, and a great fragrance this one. It's kind of a soapy, fresh, sporty fragrance. My wife's very fond of this one. She says it's a real fresh, manly kind of fragrance. Unfortunately, at the moment, my wife's not really happy. She's not talking to me. We had a bit of trouble the other day. We had a bit of a party, a dinner party, and we had 7 people round, including ourselves. So there were 7 of us. Now, unfortunately, due to the current restrictions, you're only allowed 6 people in the house. Everything was fine, and we were having a nice time until we had a knock on the door, and it was a policeman. He said, "Police, open up. This is a spot check." So I thought, oh goodness, what are we going to do? I said, quick as a flash, I said to my wife, "Quick, take all your clothes off and jump in the oven head first with your backside hanging out. That way you'll look like a turkey. We'll say we're having an early Christmas dinner." So she wasn't too happy, but she did it reluctantly, and then we let the policeman in. So he came in, everything was fine. He looked round, there were just 6 of us, and that was okay. But then unfortunately my wife, she coughed. Not the loudest cough, but loud enough that I think he heard something. So he looked at her backside and he said, "That's a very big turkey you've got there." I said, "Well, there's 6 of us and we're big eaters." He said, "Are you sure it's a turkey?" I said, "What do you mean? Yeah, of course it is. I can prove it to you if you want." He said, "How are you going to do that?" I said, "Look, I'll show you. I'm just about to put the stuffing in."
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So a video today about my 5 most loved or most cherished fragrances. It's a new series that I'm doing, and mainly of course I'm going to be interviewing other people. The first person was Clemence CC. That was a great video a few videos back on the channel. I think the next person is going to be Chris from Scentland. So it's like a podcast. You'll see the 2 of us on the screen, and I find out all about the fragrances that people love most, that mean the most to them. Obviously they're going to be ones that smell really good, but maybe that have the most personal connection too. So in my case, it's 5 fragrances that are really good, but not necessarily my 5 favourite smells. They're the ones with the biggest emotional attachment. Let's find out what they are. I'm going to flip the camera angle in one moment. Before that, don't forget, if you want to join up to my Patreon group, you get an extra video every week. The most recent one is about my very lonely upcoming Christmas and festive fragrances that I'm going to be wearing to enjoy with no one else but myself. So you can follow the link in the description to sign up for just $2 a month. Let's get into the video now. Okay guys, let's get stuck into it. So we're going to look at my 5 most cherished scents. Before we get into that, don't forget I've got a code SMELLY10 for executiveshaving.co.uk. That gives you 10% off on their website. Fantastic place for shaving products, but also superb affordable fragrances such as the brilliant Del Don and Fra Rinnic from the brand called Extro, E-X-T-R-O, an Italian brand making fantastic fresh barbershop style fragrances. This one a fantastic herbal citrus soapy scent, Del Don, and Fra Rinnic like the best Turkish barber's citrusy type barbershop scent you've ever smelled for the money. I think they're like £12.50 each, even cheaper with my discount. Follow the link in the description if you're in the EU or the UK where their fragrances ship to. Okay, so let's look at my most cherished fragrances. So the idea here is I'm going to be talking about fragrances that I have the biggest emotional attachment to, that are important in my heart, not necessarily the best smelling 5 in my collection. So there'll be a good reason why I love them, maybe a story or something like that. Now let's get stuck into it. First one, it's going to be this classic scent from Javonte Gentlemen, a 1974 release from the wonderful house of Javonte, from Hubert Givenchy. And I think this was their second masculine release after Monsieur de Givenchy came out in 1959. So let's have a look at the bottle there. It is a fabulous box and just an okay bottle. The bottle kind of less brilliant than the actual box, but a really, really great fragrance. So Javonte Gentlemen came out first 1974, and it was Paul Leger, the perfumer, for this one. It's a really superb aromatic woody leather type fragrance. Let's talk about the reason it's in my list first though. So this was basically my dad's only aftershave or eau de toilette, whichever he had, when I was growing up. So I was born in 1977, the fragrance came out a little bit before that, and so right through the 80s and into the early to mid 90s, if my dad wore a fragrance, which he didn't all the time, but if he did, this was the only thing that I ever saw in the house. My mum picked it out for him, probably, not too long after it came out, and it became his signature scent, which I think she would probably buy it for him for Christmas or whatever. And that therefore, actually, more, not that it particularly has big memories that I remember my dad wearing it a lot, because he didn't really wear aftershave that much, maybe only now and again on a supposedly special occasion. I don't think he habitually wore it, even if he went down to the pub, certainly not to work and stuff like that. So it doesn't actually conjure massive memories of my father, but it does just conjure memories of it being what I saw at the time, a luxurious thing that we had in the house. So we didn't have tons of luxurious designer goods and stuff. But this, the box design, I love that. Are they Greek keys or whatever? And it's kind of a G, isn't it? The Javonte symbol, much better quality actually than your modern boxes. It's actually got a bit of texture on there, and it's a kind of sort of laminated box. So really high quality box that you don't get anymore for that fragrance. It all tied in with the feeling that this was a very luxurious, high quality thing. My mum, before I was born, was sort of involved in the fashion industry. She was a designer, not equivalent to Versace, but she worked for the company Hardy Amy's. So she was in the world of fashion a little bit, designing dresses and shirts and all that kind of stuff. And it kind of, I sort of thought that she maybe knew a thing or two about the world of fragrances and fashion design and glamour and all that. And so this had a certain mystique and magic to me. The smell on it also was very potent and definitely very masculine, I feel, and really just summed up everything that a man should be as I was growing up. So it was my first experience of what a fragrance is for a man. And also, if I was once I started going out a bit, in my sort of mid to late teens, 15, 16, 17 years old, I would steal a few splashes of this. My dad definitely had a splash at one time. I think it was usually a splash. I don't know whether it was eau de toilette or aftershave. I wouldn't have known the difference. The note listing and all that, we've got bergamot, lemon, a kind of honey lemon opening type of thing, which is really pleasant. There's tarragon in this one. There's a ton of leather, and there's also an absolute ton of patchouli. So if you like patchouli, you may really like this, and if you don't, you probably won't. And it's also got a kind of musk and civet base, so it's a little bit funky and maybe animalic. Totally different to things like Kouros, which came later, which was more of a fougere. Very, very heavy, potent, thick, rich masculine fragrance. Absolute classic, and definitely has big time emotional stuff about that one in my heart, that one. Okay, moving on then. Okay, so I'll do one quick honourable mention. Please forgive me, viewers, self-promotion, I guess, but it would be wrong. I mean, of course, I've got my own fragrance brand, and this is the fragrance Gravitas Pour Homme. Of course, I cherish it hugely. It's incredibly, a huge big deal to me to have my own fragrance out there, or at least my brand, Naughton & Wilson. Please don't think of this really as a YouTuber brand. We don't want to think of ourselves that way. It's a passion project by me, a side project really. Aside from my YouTube fragrance channel, Naughton & Wilson, we are making high-class, gentlemanly, we will be making unisex fragrances too. So let's say high-class fragrances with a bit of a retro feel that are still relevant and wearable today and not dated in any way. There'll be a new one coming soon. Gravitas has been incredible. Thank you to so many people who've bought it or tried it and shown support over the last year or so. There's a link in the description to buy it. We ship to the USA, UK, EU and Canada. Incredibly, we were picked by Miguel Matos in Fragrantica as his best discovery of 2020. That's a huge accolade, and this in many ways is my most cherished, but officially let's disclude it because I'm biased. Next up, we're going to go for Chanel Pour Monsieur. This was kind of the first thing I ever really picked out for myself. This was before I was Mr. Smelly, before I was unusually into fragrances any more than the average person. So Pour Monsieur from Chanel, it was just a case of me trying a few different things. I think it was in my local branch of Boots, which UK viewers will know is your sort of mainstream chemist, pharmacist in your local high street here in the UK, and they have a ton of different sort of products of the kind of body wash type and all that kind of stuff, and it includes designer fragrances. So a lot of us maybe bought our first fragrance from Boots. It is a really brilliant fragrance. I remember trying a few, and I just liked the idea of Chanel being in my mind. This is about the age of early 20s, early to mid 20s. I liked the idea of Chanel being what I thought of as one of the most classy and famous, prestigious French houses, maybe a little bit more classy in my mind than the cocky, more youthful houses of Dolce & Gabbana or Jean-Paul Gaultier or even Versace and stuff like that. These guys had the real track record. And the idea that it was simply called Pour Monsieur just said to me, yep, this is what a man should wear. and I liked that. And the smell is really, really beautiful, very different to Javonte Gentlemen. Beautiful kind of citrus chypre fragrance, lovely citrus opening notes of bergamot, things like that. Some spices, there's ginger, there's loads of oak moss, a bit of lavender. Very, very classic, refined, not very strong. I remember being a bit disappointed that I didn't feel it smelled that strong. Even back then, I'd never heard of Performance or anything like that. But I definitely had this as quite an unusual choice, I guess, for a guy in his mid-20s, in somewhere in this sort of early 2000s. I was wearing this for a while, but I definitely look back to that as a happy time in the prime of my life. And Chanel Pour Monsieur, definitely a happy memory. The first thing I ever picked out for myself, I'd been gifted things like Fahrenheit and La Malle actually before that from my mum. Shows you something, doesn't it? Sadly, I don't have many girlfriends that I remember from then. But there you go. They were nice, but they didn't really feel like they were me. You know what I mean? So I was an old retro guy even back then. To me, incredibly actually, La Malle or Fahrenheit back then to me were newfangled, fancy new fragrances. Although now we think of them as rather old. Okay, now here's a real big one in my life. This is Chanel Allure Homme Sport. Sorry, it's a Chanel again, but I've got to be honest, a real battered old bottle here. It's empty actually, and it's the last one that I actually ever used, and it was quite a few years back since I used it. So it came out in 2004, and this was really my big signature scent for several years, quite a few years, in the prime of my life, I guess. Let's hope that's still to come. But, physically, in terms of your sort of aging, your 20s is as good as it gets, I guess. Allure Homme Sport then, 2004 release, fantastic sports fragrance. I was in a newsagent one day, and it was kind of a scratch and sniff, or one of those things where you peel off and sniff. Had this rather good advert with a chiseled looking guy on a surfboard or by the sea or something. And I liked the idea that whereas Pour Monsieur, I think, which I was still wearing and using at the time, was very classy and refined, it maybe felt a little stuffy and old-fashioned, and I kind of knew maybe it wouldn't appeal to ladies massively unless they wanted to be reminded of their uncle. But I kind of got the feeling that Allure Homme Sport had this youthful, fresh vibe about it, and I loved the smell. I really, really liked it. It's fresh and it's zesty. It's sort of neroli and soapiness mixed with the classic aldehydes of Chanel and some sort of synthetic shower gel notes, but there's just something of the Chanel class about it. Even for me, if you compare it to other freshies like L'Eau d'Essai or Acqua di Chio, which are really good, this just has that little bit of Chanel magic and class, and still has that very youthful, you'd wear it with a white Lacoste polo shirt or whatever, and I really, really like this one a lot. So I think this was a massive part of my life, huge emotional importance. I think it was my signature scent for going on for like 10 years. If you can hear me rustling, I'm just going to try and find a photo which may be relevant to the video, but I can't find the ruddy darned thing. There they are. Okay, guys, here we go. This is on the spur of the moment stuff here. Now, I've got a packet of photos from a holiday that I had in 2004, and this was the year I found this fragrance. So it was at the peak of me thinking this was the best thing ever. I'll have to not show you the ones with the young lady that I was with, a girlfriend at the time. She soon found out that I'm good for about 2 months as a boyfriend, and after that, when it gets time to ask the serious questions of where's our life and relationship going, the answers I gave were not the ones she wanted to hear. There's me going for a run in, where were we? Gran Canaria. There is me smiling and looking very sunburned. There is me smiling, looking very sunburned and very drunk, which I was. Some things don't change. And there's me looking a bit more tubby there. I must have sucked my gut in the other pictures, but going for a jog. Skip the young lady there. Sorry about what happened if you're watching to that girl. She was a very nice girl. And there's a lovely sunset picture. There's one actually of me with a large beer, which kind of sums me up better than anything else, actually. There's me again having fun and definitely smelling of Chanel Allure Homme Sport at the Actually, you know what? Then I probably only wore it at night. I hadn't really got the idea that you should wear a fragrance all the time. Okay, guys, so there's a glimpse into my actual life. That's what this video is all about. Great fragrance, love it. Moving on then. Once I actually got into this insane hobby, the thing, many viewers, regular viewers, both of you will know, that my favourite fragrance ever is Bois de Portugal from Creed. This is a stunning, superb fragrance. It is incredible, and it's since I got into fragrances and became Mr. Smelly and started the channel in 2016, and a bit before that I got into them. This has been the one that's blown me away. It's actually my first fragrance review ever on the channel, which is absolute rubbish. Looks like it was filmed on a potato, and it's really quiet and I'm nervous, and there's not even any hilarious jokes that you've come to expect from me now. But there you go, it tells you something. Fantastic classic fragrance, 1987. It's got bergamot, it's got sandalwood, lavender, ambergris, vetiver. It's kind of got a dusty old bookshelf vibe to me, but a classy, refined aura. A bit like Paul Machor, but a little bit richer and deeper. Just absolutely classic, and it's really just everything I look for in a fragrance, everything you associate with the kind of thing I bang on about liking on the channel. Classy, refined, a bit old-fashioned, but it doesn't smell dated to me. It's not going to be the biggest compliment getter, but I don't think I've smelled anything that actually really, really betters it in any way. So an absolutely brilliant fragrance and a nice performance on that one. I really, really just, you know, if they had to take everything away, this would be a strong contender for the one fragrance I might keep. There's one more to go then, and that's this one. Colonia Essenza from Acqua di Parma. And again, this one ties in a way with this story that, well, I was, you know, happy that I'd got into this hobby, excited, and my channel was about to start and all that kind of stuff. And this was one of the first big ones that I really discovered I really, really liked. Acqua di Parma's Colonia Essenza. I think it's a 2012 or 11 or somewhere around that release. Don't know the perfumer for this one. It's a fantastic soapy citrus Italian Mediterranean kind of fragrance. You could call it Neroli Portofino on steroids or something like that. Both this and Bois de Portugal were two big discoveries at a time when I was just kind of, you know, beginning to do the YouTube stuff, or was about to. I'd actually, to be honest, I'll give you a little bit of personal stuff again, guys. Different relationship. I'd been in a bad relationship that came along while I was still wearing this stuff. And, you know, I just remember it was absolutely awful. I lived with the girl for about 6 years, and I mean, if anyone else has ever done stuff like this, you'll know I used to maybe go for a walk, excuse myself from the house, go for a walk for an hour at 10 p.m. at night, even in January, because I just wanted to escape the miserable atmosphere of being trapped in the house with a person that I wasn't getting on with. And it was absolutely awful, you know, going to bed every night, sleeping back to back as far away from each other as possible in a bed, and wishing you'd bought a king size instead of just a large bed. So it was that kind of vibe, and just coming out of that was so rejuvenating and fantastic. And then getting into the fragrances heavily, and this fragrance, the smell of it sums up that time. Takes me back to the time when I was experiencing all that, and the excitement of when you first get into fragrances. You never quite get that hit. You're always searching for, you need more of the drug to get the same hit. But in those first few months when you really discover the world of niche and get into it heavily for the first time, you know, it's like when you have your first few experiences with drinking and it only takes a couple of pints to get drunk, or, you know, not that I do drugs, but maybe your first hit of heroin, you might just need, you know, a tiny bit and you feel amazing, and then after that you need much bigger hits to get even a fraction of the same high. Well, it was like that with things like Colonia Essenza and Bois de Portugal. Still very few things I'd say are much better than that in my collection. Had a few good nights out on it, and yeah, definitely helped me feel like I was a new, reborn person. So a superb fragrance I really love. So there they are. Old one from my dad. First one I chose for myself. My main kind of big hit. Oh, by the way, guys, I got loads of compliments on Allure Homme Sport over the years. You know, in the days when I used to, can you believe it, occasionally pull in the pub or wherever. I think this did help a little bit, although performance isn't amazing. Those days are long gone now, but these are my big hitters from my Mr. Smelly days that still mean a lot to me. So guys, let me know what you think about that in the comments down below. What are your most cherished fragrances? I'm very grateful to you for joining me. I'll see you in the next video. Remember, whatever you're doing in life, let's project. Bye-bye.